You have to think of of farming your microbiome, of growing it very gradually, and with the right probiotics and the right prebiotics and the right symbiotics. One of the most toxic things we do in our Western lifestyle is we do not find time to slow down and actually rest. Our bodies are habit-based, and if you do not give them that habit of rest, they will go into imbalance. Sleep and stress management. Those are the two things that I would emphasize are so critical and often not even delved into when we are managing asthma.
This is the Transformational Life Consulting Podcast with Deepa Grandin, MD, where Christians like you get the practical support and tools you need to build your spiritual, mental, and physical well-being, and to guide you on your journey to health and wholeness based on evidence-based science and God's Word. I am your host, Dr. Deepa Grandin. I would like to extend a special welcome to all our first-time listeners to the Time to Transform podcast. We hope you find the information we share here transformational. So today's podcast is very special to me because asthma is one of my passions. As most of you know, I am an allergy immunology physician and lifestyle certified physician. So how can lifestyle choices impact asthma is what we're going to focus on today. So just that everybody's on the same page, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what is asthma and what are some of the manifestations of asthma. So asthma is a chronic disease of the airways, and it's mainly caused by inflammation. Now, when we talk about inflammation in the airways, the result of that is you get these really narrow, swollen airways that get filled with mucus, which makes it difficult for the individual to breathe. So they usually complain of feeling tight in their chest, cough a lot, have wheezing. And common triggers of the asthma experience are allergies, and that can be in the form of pets, pollen, smoke, cold weather, exercise, strong odors, stress. And sometimes asthma can be quite severe and can be fatal if it's not treated properly. Now, there is no cure for asthma, and so that's the reason why the focus of management is usually to achieve good control so the individual can maintain normal activity and minimize future risk of having these flare-ups of their asthma. Asthma is actually quite prevalent. It's estimated that about 300 million people worldwide have asthma. And while the main management of asthma is asthma inhalers, and in some cases, these individuals will need steroids, and sometimes the newer forms of treatment called biologics. However, due to the medication burden in treating asthma, and especially with the newer treatments being quite expensive, there has been an increasing interest in the role of lifestyle interventions as adjunct or alternative treatment for people with asthma. So there's been a lot of research done in the area of lifestyle, and it actually does show great promise. And it's the nice thing about lifestyle is anybody can do it. It's not cost prohibitive, and it just needs some amount of awareness as to which type of lifestyle specific to asthma can be beneficial. So to delve further into this topic of lifestyle and asthma, I am so pleased to welcome our first-time guest speaker, Dr. Atoosa Kourosh, to this podcast. Dr. Kourosh is MD, MPH. She is a board-certified specialist in allergy and immunology. She's also a pediatrician. She founded her practice, Holistic Allergy and Immunology, in 2022 and has been providing telemedicine allergy care since 2018. She is on staff at Children's Medical Center in Dallas. She's actively involved in advocacy work, and she serves on the Texas Pediatric Society's Education Committee, Health and Nutrition Committee, and Injury Prevention and Environmental Health Committee. She has over 20 years of medical experience as a pediatrician, allergist, immunologist, and Dr. Tusa has worked with a diverse population, both in the United States as well as abroad. Dr. Tusa is currently serving as the chair of the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology's Committee on Integrative Medicine, and she advocates for evidence based, innovative approaches to patient care. She earned her medical degree from UT Southwestern Medical School, completed her residency and fellowship at Baylor College of Medicine at Texas Children's Hospital, and she holds a master's degree in public health from UT Health Science Center in Houston. She is a board certified patient health advocate. She is committed to advancing global health, promoting social justice, achieving health equity, and ensuring access to care. So, given her extensive experience and expertise, I'm truly grateful to have Dr. Tusa offer her insights into the care of asthma from a holistic perspective. Thank you, Dr. Tusa, for taking the time to talk to us about lifestyle and asthma. Before we delve into the topic, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you like to do for fun? And also, what caused you to get interested in the holistic approach as an allergist immunologist?
Yes, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Dr. Grandin, and to discuss a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is holistic and integrative therapies for allergy and immunology conditions. I am a nature girl, so if I have the opportunity to be out in nature, that's what I prefer. I also really love to dance, many different dance forms, a lot of ballroom dance forms and other types of dance forms. And I also love all kinds of community activities, the kind that help us get closer to our neighbors. So, and one of my passions is that I mentor a youth group of high school students who are exploring moral and spiritual topics and how to be of service to their community. So, those are my passions and my the things that take up my time outside of work. But I also have a passion for entrepreneurship, and it was one of my goals for many years to start my own practice. And one of the primary reasons I started my own practice, holistic allergy and immunology, was that trying to fit into the box of corporate medicine and help my patients with all of the integrative therapies that I had been educated on, just as you have, having done lifestyle medicine and integrative medicine. It was very difficult to fit that in to the structure of corporate medicine and the way that clinics run and hospital services run. So that was how I came to start my own practice. But I've always been interested in holistic and integrative medicine. I think I could attribute my passion for it to my mother, who was studying nutrition. Even when I was in high school, she was getting her PhD, her master's, and her PhD in public health nutrition. And she's the one that got me interested in one of my passions, which is the microbiome, which I'll talk about later as it relates to asthma. But the microbiome, which is like our multitudes that live within us, microbial cells that help us and are living symbiotically with us and in cooperation with our bodies. So I got interested, and I even studied integrative medicine in medical school, did 2 different rotations on integrative medicine at the University of Arizona and their integrative medicine program back when they first began to take medical student rotators. So I would say that in my earliest days as a doctor, I knew that I wanted to combine holistic and integrative methodologies with the cutting edge Western medicine practices that we were being taught. And I've worked my entire career to try to do that. And now I'm living that life where my practice is fully an integrative medicine practice, and I treat asthma with all modalities that work for it, including integrative and holistic practices and lifestyle medicine practices, and as well as medications and other treatments when the patient decides. And that is, in a nutshell, how I practice and who I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm so grateful that I am also part of the integrative medicine with the ACAAI,
I'd
and
love to have you.
the chair. And yeah, it's just so nice to be working with like minded people especially in a field where you don't get to hear a whole lot of it, although now you do see a lot more research in the microbiome space. But yeah, it's just amazing to meet up and work with people like you who have very similar passions. So I like to ask my frequent podcast listeners to share questions that they like answered. So this came from one of my longtime listeners, Josh. And the question that he asked was, which lifestyle measures can reduce the severity of asthma?
Wow, that is such a great question. There are several lifestyle measures that have been studied. Any kind of stress reduction technique can work wonders to reduce asthma flares and the severity of asthma. There's been lots of studies linking anxiety to asthma, as in anxiety can trigger asthma and asthma can trigger anxiety. So it's a vicious circle where both trigger each other. So for that reason, and for the mechanical reasons of lung expansion, breath practices have been shown to make a very important difference in asthma control and asthma quality of life. So people who practice studied breath practices like diaphragmatic breath, the Papworth method, Buteyko breath, and other types of breath practices like bumblebee breath, which are easily found on YouTube with demonstration videos. All of those have been shown and studied in good quality studies, like even placebo controlled, where some people were doing just general breathing, deep breathing, and others were doing the specific types of breath practices. They have been shown to make a difference. So that's one big important thing, which both reduces stress and expands the lungs and changes the lung breath dynamic in a way that promotes asthma control. Because often with asthma, it's not being able to exhale. That is the problem. The airways, as you said, are narrow, and exhaling past that narrow airway is hard. So we work a lot on the exhale when it comes to these breath practices, and that works very well. The other is having a frequent exercise regimen that includes both aerobic exercise and also other types of resistance exercises. It's been shown that these combination of endurance and resistance exercises expands force vital capacity, which is one of the measures of asthma. How much breath can you expel in one exhalation? It can improve your capacity to breathe and expand your lung volume. So that all of that can help with asthma control and can help with the loss of airways as we age. So people lose airways as we age. We actually lose functional airways. Little alveoli that work on oxygen exchange just retire and die as we age. And we can keep those alive by exercising frequently, at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah, I mean, those are such great points because for the longest time, I remember telling patients, be careful with cardio and things like that. But now the evidence shows that even high intensity training has beneficial
Mhm.
effects in asthmatics.
Yes.
And you look
It
at,
does. I mean, you don't want to trigger your asthma attack, but as long as your asthma is well controlled in that moment, exercising is great for preventing future asthma attacks.
absolutely, yeah, and really to emphasize that term prevention, when all things are stable and good, that's when you start doing the preventative type things. And yeah, so those are great points. And the other thing I was reminded when you talk about the deep breathing and stress, we have good evidence that it stimulates the parasympathetic pathway. And people with the asthma, when they're so stressed, they go into the shallow breathing, and it's more cortisol based and driven type of measures. But being conscious and intentional with that diaphragmatic type breathing will stimulate the parasympathetic and definitely reduce stress. So thanks for sharing those really great tips. Now, obesity and sedentary lifestyle are key research areas for the management of asthma. Why is obesity associated with poorer outcomes in asthma?
I think it's twofold. Number one is that obesity can increase the mass around the chest and create what's called a restrictive dysfunction of breathing. So asthma is mainly an obstructive dysfunction of breathing, which means that there's an obstruction, like you said, the narrowing airway, obstruction for the airflow. So that's one kind. But then when fat presses down on the rib cage, it can create a restrictive problem where the airway can't expand, or the lung can't expand, because there is a restriction in the rib cage based on the fat around the rib cage. So because of that, obesity can compound the breath dysfunction that is part of asthma by adding a whole other kind of dysfunction. So that's one way that obesity can compound both the symptoms and the severity of asthma. The other is that obesity is an inflammatory state. So when a person is carrying extra fat, that fat serves as an inflammatory trigger in the body. And we have seen not just increases in cholesterol and blood sugar, but increases in objective measures of body-wide inflammation, like C-reactive protein, which are lab tests that we order. And we know that that can often be attributed to obesity, and it can reduce as weight is reduced by the person. So we know that any kind of body-wide inflammation can trigger the inflammatory response of asthma. So someone who is in an inflamed state because of obesity, that can further trigger any other inflammatory condition in their body, including asthma. So we think that that's a twofold issue. There may also be a microbiome issue underlying it. There's microbiome predisposition to obesity, like a dysfunction or an imbalance of the gut microbiome, that then also leads to an imbalance of the airway microbiome. So often the lung microbiome and the gut microbiome are passing microbes back and forth to each other, and a dysfunction and an inflammatory setup in one can lead to an inflammatory setup in the other. So this is still an area of major study in microbiome science, but there is some data to show that there is a major difference between the microbiome of an obese person and the microbiome of a normal weight person. And there's a chicken and an egg issue there. So if your microbiome is disturbed, is that what predisposed you to gaining weight abnormally in the first place? And is that then what led to the rest of the inflammatory cascade in the body?
Yeah, that's actually such a cool point, because with the fecal transplants, they've actually, like by mistake, even stepped into that whole realm of, the obese person's fecal matter going into a thin person and thin person gaining weight. And so, yeah, that's just been extremely fascinating. And the other thing about obesity, when you look at the GLP-1s and the bariatric surgery, in a way, it's actually also helping asthmatics. What I've read is as little as 5 to 10% of weight loss can actually make a significant difference in asthma control. So that's pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. So what does the evidence show about the impact of Western diet versus Mediterranean diet on asthma?
Wow, that is such a great question. And it interplays with the obesity question, right? Because there's also great research on the Western diet being obesity promoting and the Mediterranean diet being healthy weight promoting. But there is good data that the Mediterranean diet, so one that is made up of whole foods, good fats, lean proteins, a lot of seafood, and highly vegetable centered, can help with asthma remission. And there's even studies that show that it's an impact on fungal growth. And again, talking about the microbiome and microbes that we don't see, there is possibly yeast and fungal interplay in the lungs, which creates more inflammation and more asthma triggering. And there's some data that lower carb or whole food diets promote a situation in the lungs where the fungus cannot grow as well, and therefore asthma is not as triggered. And even this has been studied to the point of antifungal medications being used to help with asthma remission in hard to control asthma. And that also has led to some dietary research as to what is an antifungal diet. And we know that the more whole foods we eat and the fewer processed carbohydrates and sugars that we eat, the less likely yeast and fungus are to take hold and grow in the body. So that's part of it. I think it's partly that the Mediterranean diet influences the microbiome. Again, we're coming back to that. And part of it is that these vegetable-centered, good fats diets also just decrease inflammation on their own. They have anti-inflammatory properties. So food as medicine and eating lots of omega-3 fatty acids, good fats, which are found in, say, wild-caught fish and grass-fed beef and range-fed eggs. Those are anti-inflammatory in and of themselves, which is why we put asthmatics and people with allergies and people with inflammatory conditions on fish oil supplements and those kind of things, because we're trying to promote what they might not be getting in their diet. So that, I think, is the key to the food as medicine piece when it comes to asthma.
Yeah. Yeah, such great points, especially with the microbiome, because the Mediterranean diet is so rich in fiber, which is essential for the good bacteria, especially the ones that make the short chain fatty acids. Because
Yes,
those do show that it has end organ benefit, like you were talking about the gut lung connection. So
definitely.
for sure. And then we have our ABPA patients, those with allergic bronchopulmonary
Hmm.
aspergillosis. And then,
Hmm.
it makes a lot of sense that we find it so hard with these overlapping diseases, how to get these patients better controlled. It always is a challenge. So, how does physical activity improve lung function and quality of life in asthma?
Yeah. So again, there's dual benefits. There's really great research that shows physical activity reduces stress. And whether you're out in nature or at the gym, getting a workout in, even if it's, a 20-minute workout, it doesn't have to be an hour-long workout, can make a dramatic difference in stress management for not just that day, but even the next day sometimes. So they've done a lot of good quality of life research. So part of it is the stress relieving aspects of physical activity. But the other is just like you build your other muscles as you work, your physical activity builds your airway muscles and puts them under better control when it comes to opening and enabling, like you said, that parasympathetic nervous system to engage. So during the course of physical activity, airway muscles relax and expand in order to allow more airway exchange because we need oxygen as we work out. So it's using a physiologic response to enable us to expand our lung volume and our lung capacity during exercise. And there's good evidence that that athletic stimulation continues even when you're not working out. The benefits to lung expansion and smooth muscle relaxation in the airway continue. So again, it's that twofold stress relief and training of the musculature in the body in that. And then the other thing that happens is that physical activity can reduce body fat. And body fat, we know that body fat is inflammatory. We talked about this. So there's that third piece, which if the physical activity is leading to fat reduction, you can cause an anti-inflammatory change in your body by working out. And we know that exercise in moderate amounts is anti-inflammatory. Now, if you're over-exercising, it can be pro-inflammatory. So it's always important to find the moderation and the balance and what is right for that person, because it's not reasonable to go from couch to 3 hours a day of exercise. But if someone starts gradually and builds, then even 40 to 60 minutes of exercise 4 to 5 times a week is fine and can be very healthy.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And we also, tend to forget sometimes even the skeletal muscle, like the intercostal muscles,
Yes.
all of those get strengthened and the mitochondria increases in size and its ability just to empower the body to take on more and the stamina improves. And I think just,
Yes.
And then the
Great point.
endorphins in your brain improve, because we also know a lot of asthmatics suffer from depression and anxiety. And exercise is such a natural way of overcoming by releasing those good endorphins. So yeah, great points.
Fantastic.
Now, there have been trials published in the British Journal of Nutrition that show improved lung function with an increase in fruit and vegetable intake. So, what is the mechanism by which this improvement occurs?
Yeah, so we talked a little about the microbiome already, and it's important to know that fruits and vegetables are the best natural source of what's called prebiotics, which are the fuel that our good bacteria uses to build their colonies and create those short chain fatty acids that are anti-inflammatory. So eating those good whole fruits and vegetables is a way to set up your gut for success with respect to creating the biochemical environment that we need for an anti-inflammatory setup, as well as nurturing the ability of our bodies to fuel all our functions. So they have nutrients that we need for our functioning, like vitamin A, which is an anti-inflammatory vitamin that helps with fighting off bad bacteria and fungus, and as well as viruses. So all of those reasons are why fruits and vegetables have been studied as far as a medication, almost like a food as medicine, to help with asthma and other inflammatory conditions like
Yeah.
autoimmune disease.
Yeah, a lot of antioxidants, vitamin C and vitamin.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, of course. So, what is the role of prebiotics? So, you did mention,
Mm-hmm.
how the fruits and vegetables provide
Contain.
that, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe can you tell us a little bit more about systemic inflammation and its reduction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so prebiotics can help to increase the good bacterial colonies that then make the chemicals that decrease systemic inflammation. So you mentioned probutyrate and butyrate, which are short chain fatty acids, which are very important metabolic products of the gut that are not made by human cells, but are made by the bacterial cells that live in our gut. So that can help with systemic inflammation, not just gut inflammation, but airway inflammation and joint and body-wide inflammation. So all of that can play a role. And there are prebiotic supplements. Some of them have been well studied that can help with those bacterial colonies as well, if you can't get everything you need from food, which sometimes we can't, and especially at the beginning, as we're beginning to change our diet, sometimes these
Exactly.
supplement protocols do help. But yeah, I think in order to encourage the growth of the right kind of bacteria, sometimes we do need to prime the gut with prebiotics, which are, so there's prebiotics, which help good bacteria grow, probiotics, which are the introduction of the good bacteria that maybe we might be missing and we might be adding to the gut in order to take hold. And then there's symbiotics, which are things like polyphenols, or polyphenols are existing in dark berry fruits like blueberries or cranberries, or they're also in pomegranate. And these polyphenols, which are these dark purple and dark red substances that exist in fruits, they also act as symbiotics, which means that they help the anchoring and the nurturing of those colonies, and they create the right chemical environment for those bacteria to grow and give them the fuels that they need. So all of those are important components of nurturing the right anti-inflammatory microbiome.
Yeah. So I think, how you were talking about the anti-inflammatory effects of the prebiotics, the probiotics, the symbiotics. I can't tell you how many patients I have with irritable bowel syndrome that felt they got worse going from junk food to eating more plant-based. And one of the things I have to remind them is you have to cultivate your gut microbiome. You cannot just go from eating foods that don't require bacteria to digest to eating foods that require bacteria to digest. So, like you had mentioned about the supplements, that's a good bridge to help
Hmm.
individuals who have not had, that type of diet for the longest time and then they're trying to get healthy. It's always good to start small. Like you had mentioned with the exercise, I think even with the plant-based diet, it's good to start small so you're not miserable.
Absolutely. I have seen people hurt themselves worse by transitioning so rapidly that they don't have time, like you said, to cultivate the good bacteria. It's like expecting a farm to produce at full capacity when you've just begun to plant.
Yeah.
So it's not going to happen. So you have to think of of farming your microbiome, of growing it very gradually, and with the right probiotics and the right prebiotics and the right symbiotics, and then also with the foods that have, starting out with the better digested and more easily digested fruits and vegetables, and transitioning to the harder to digest cruciferous vegetables, the ones that are crunchy and have more fibrous, difficult to digest fiber. Eventually those people can digest those foods, but like you said, it has to be a slow transition.
Yeah, so you did tell us about probiotics and symbiotics. So, what are some familiar sources besides the fruits and vegetables?
That's such a great question. So, cultured and fermented foods contain rich assortment of probiotics, and even have not just good bacteria but good fungus sometimes, which outcompetes the bad fungus and the bad yeast. So things like sauerkraut, kimchi are good examples of fermented foods, and then there are cultured foods. There's cultured dairy, but if you're non-dairy, there's also cultured coconut products. And right now, there's so many alternative yogurts made of plant-based milks, which those still have very good active culture. And then there's some other traditional things like fermented foods like kombucha, that is a fermented drink. And there's other cultured drinks like kefir, which can come in a non-dairy form as well, in kefir waters. So all of those present good forms of cultured and fermented foods that have a collection of good bacteria and can help your gut seed with the right bacteria. But again, they have to be introduced in moderation. So because a lot of those still have vegetables that require digestion, and some people, if they add a lot of that to their diet, they can have digestive disturbance. So once again, adding in moderation cultured and fermented foods, and gradually increasing the frequency as well as the amount of cultured and fermented foods that someone eats can be very helpful.
Yeah. So let's flip the switch a little. How about saturated fats? Why is
Yeah.
terrible for you?
So those are also pro-inflammatory fats. So they're fats that, first of all, they are not well used by the good microbes, but are very well used by bad microbes. So that's one of the reasons that saturated fats are bad for your body and inflammatory, that they promote an inflammatory microbiome. And they themselves actually create inflammation. So they have oxidation properties or chemical properties that create an inflammatory state in the body. So for those reasons, and the fact that they are more easily converted to stored fat. So unsaturated and polyunsaturated fats in the body are less likely to be converted to stored fats on the human frame, and the saturated fats are more likely. They also play a role in blood sugar dysregulation. So even though they are fat, they can play a role in blood sugar dysregulation, which can also be toxic to the arteries as well as the airways. So high blood sugar is another thing that can be toxic to the airways. And so that's why choosing your fats correctly can make a huge difference. Not cutting back on fat, but transitioning to the right kind of fat. Especially as we get older, our bodies actually might need a little more fat, but it should be the right kind, like mono and polyunsaturated fats, olive oils, coconut oil, avocados, those kind of things are the right kind of fats if they're right for your body. Every person is different, but it's important to pick the anti-inflammatory oils for cooking and not cook with low smoke point oils. Like it was all the rage to cook with olive oil, for instance, but if you heat olive oil to cooking temperatures, it can transition into a trans fat. So it's important to use only low temperature cooking if you're using olive oil, or add it after the food is already cooked, and cook with a high smoke point oil like avocado oil.
Okay, wonderful. Great points. Yeah, I actually was looking at the study where they did comparisons of individuals who had plenty of fiber in their diet versus more of a Western type diet where it's really poor in, good fibrous foods. And their airway inflammation was significantly worse. And they did attribute it to the fact that, when you consume foods that do not have a lot of fiber, you're going to be always hungry and you're going to be consuming more of that type of food. So it is a vicious cycle.
It's true.
Yeah.
And the fiber is part of the prebiotic mix that we're feeding our bacteria. So if you're lacking that, then you're lacking what your bacteria need to grow.
True. So, Dr. Atoosa, you shared a lot of really fabulous information with us. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we conclude?
I think I started this with a pitch about stress relief, and I want to end with that because I think that one of the most toxic things we do in our Western lifestyle is we do not find time to slow down and actually rest. So I cannot emphasize the importance of sleep on the microbiome. We've talked so much about the microbiome. There is data that if you lose one night of sleep, there are adverse effects on your microbiome. So sacrificing even 4 hours, like getting 6 hours of sleep instead of 8 hours, 3 or 4 nights in a row, that can be enough to alter the microbiome into an inflammatory state, even if it was in a good state before. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of a good regimented sleep pattern, sleeping at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every morning. As you know, as a lifestyle medicine doctor, our bodies are habit-based. And if you do not give them that habit of rest, they will go into imbalance. So that rest and recovery is so critical to the anti-inflammatory lifestyle. The other is taking moments of rest even while not asleep. And one of the most critical things that was important to my own anti-inflammatory lifestyle was literally giving myself 10 to 15 minutes to simply sit. No media, no music, no talking, no reading, just sitting and allowing myself to be in a state of repose with no responsibility for those 10 minutes. And I think it's very hard to do that when you have a busy family life, when you have a busy work life, when you have a busy community life. But scheduling it, carving it out, it can make a huge difference. To me, my sit and do nothing practice was a game changer when it came to stress management. So sleep and stress management, those are the two things that I would emphasize are so critical and often not even delved into when we are managing asthma. We talk about what medications someone uses. We might even talk about their diet and lifestyle and what exposures they have. Is there smoke in their environment? Are there fumes? We might talk about all of these things, cleaning up the dust mites in their environment. We might talk about a lot of things, but we don't talk about sleep and stress management, which are so critical in the anti-inflammatory state of the body.
Yeah. I mean, you just reminded me when you were talking about the stress management and sleep about means. Yeah, I was shocked to find that when you exercise and have good stress management, it actually increases the number of these really healthy bacteria that have been shown to reduce cardiovascular risk, stroke, even dementia. So it's amazing.
And autoimmune signaling. Akkermansia is an autoimmune, like if it's absent, that's an autoimmune signal.
Exactly.
So we know that this is a very specific good bacteria, which is part of the keystone bacteria, which means that if it's not there in the gut, then the environment of the gut cannot do what it needs to do, make neurotransmitters, train on immunity, train the body on immunity and what to fight and what to tolerate. So all of those aspects of the gut microbiome's functions are compromised if we don't have the keystone or the key bacteria, and Akkermansia is one of them. And like you mentioned, it's responsive to stress, and it can diminish just because you're stressed.
Yeah. And one more thing I would like to say before we conclude is community, because unfortunately for asthmatics, because they have to stay away from the strong odors and they really are so careful about who they hang out with. The community is so important as well for mental health and stress management. And in a way, also how it helps with the asthmatics. But
Absolutely.
yeah. Thank you, Dr. Atoosa. This was amazing.
Dr.
A lot of great information. And we look forward to having you in future episodes.
I would love that. This was my pleasure. And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about asthma and lifestyle management.